everybody, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of MetriSight. I'm Beth Schultz, Vice President of Research and Principal Analyst at Metrigy, and with me is Gideon Pridor. Gideon is the Chief Marketing Officer at Workvivo. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the company, Workvivo offers an employee experience app designed to connect employees emotionally and to keep them engaged. In large part, Workvivo is about amplifying culture. And that's a critically important objective for many companies continuing to grapple with the post-pandemic workplace issues. Metrigy's own global research on workplace collaboration shows that a lost sense of community and culture is the top challenge associated with remote work today. 41% of our study participants identified it as such. That compares to only 29% the year prior. Now, back in April, Zoom announced that it's acquiring Workvivo, and I'm excited to hear from Gidi on how the relationship and technology will evolve as a result. But we'll get to that in a moment. For now, welcome, Gidi.
Thank you, Beth. I'm really happy to be here.
Great. Now, start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, just to sort of a scene setting, who you are, why'd you join Workvivo, what attracted you to the company, had you been involved in employee experience previously?
So I was born in a cold blizzard night 45 years ago. No, I'm kidding. I've been in marketing for the vast majority of my career, usually software as a service, usually disruptive startups, reimagining traditional categories. Marketers do a lot of things. Some of them are more on the growth and data side, and some of them are more on the product marketing side. And my niche is definitely the storytelling part, which is why I'm drawn to places where you reimagine industries. So I did that in a few different industries and types of companies. And after my previous company, a startup that became really big in business travel, I met John, the founder and CEO of Workvivo, and I started actually consulting, but I got drawn in really quickly because I felt emotionally connected myself to the challenge that you started to describe. And it was something that I felt very excited to work on, making a difference there. And the rest is history. We had an amazing journey over the last 3 years or so.
And that's how long you've been at Workvivo, for the last 3 years,
Yeah.
roughly?
Roughly,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about Workvivo from a technology perspective. As I mentioned, Workvivo provides an employee experience application. So what does that mean exactly?
We like to call ourselves an employee experience platform, which represents a trend that's happening in the market, and I'm sure that you see from your side, which is a lot of point tools and communication and engagement in what used to be called an intranet. More and more vendors are avoiding to use that word because it's not the most exciting word, right? It's converging into a thing, a greater platform that is designed for all sorts of communication. And in order to elevate the digital employee experience of people working in different models from different places, a hybrid, but not only in an office, but also the 70% that actually work in the frontline and traditionally have never been connected to things like company culture and communication, in a world where, attrition is a plague, especially in a lot of these industries that are dependent on frontline employees. And research shows time and time again, and now more than ever in history, that if there is one driver for attrition, or on the other side, for keeping and retaining employees, it's the relational, emotional reasons. How much they feel connected to the culture, to the purpose, to each other, to the leadership, how much they feel appreciated. And that's what an employee experience platform is supposed to do. Give you an operating system to measure, drive, and improve the digital employee experience that is vastly based on engagement and communications in a company.
So you talked about sort of all the point products, the confusion. So if someone were to come to you, are they coming to you for employee engagement? Are they coming to you for employee communications? Are they coming just for this broader, like, we need to do something about employee experience?
So I think you covered all of the above. Option B, all of the above. That it's actually a big challenge commercially, but it's also a big part of the opportunity. If it were easy, everybody would have been doing it. And the challenge is that the discussion, the beginning of the discussion, Beth, is very different in different scenarios. And I think it has to do with like the type and DNA of companies and where they are in the maturity curve. So you have the ones that come in and, as they said in Jerry Maguire, we have them at hello. They want emotional connection, and the CEO wants to be able to sort of like, take this and reach out to everyone. And when that happens and they talk about engagement and emotional connection and purpose and we know that we're going to win. And that's where it starts. A lot of them come in and they just want a better intranet, and it's driven more by IT, and that's where the discussion starts. And then there is a heavier lift to try and sell something that is transformationally different compared to another intranet, maybe with a like button. So it starts in different places, and the personas vary as well, from heads of communication to chief HR, chief people's officers, IT, and in a lot of cases, increasingly since 2021, since sort of a year after COVID started, the CEO, him or herself, being directly involved as a stakeholder, not only because they care about culture, but because they're the number one power users of the platform. So they really
Hmm.
care and want to say the last word. So it really varies. But at the heart of everything, I think it's about that maturity curve that we have a model for that starts at very transactional, top down resource management and adds it at like a network of employees, something more community based where employees don't only get communicated to, but they get a voice. And the experience is much more consumer inspired than something built for admins. And most companies are somewhere on that curve. What's sure to say is that since COVID, everybody got pushed up that curve in order to find a solution and do something that actually gets people to adopt and engage with the solution, whatever it might be.
Okay. I'm curious. You mentioned that CEOs increasingly are getting involved. Is that determined by company size? I mean, you seeing that at the larger size companies as well as the smaller size companies?
I would actually say that we see it, yeah, in the larger size companies for sure, because for them, it's a
Okay.
strategic initiative. It reminds me of Bupa, for example, maybe the biggest insurance company or one of them in the UK. And the CEO was so involved. It was part of a bigger initiative with the CEO spirit all over it, which was about connecting everyone from people in the office to people working from home to nurses working in another country in the front line and connecting them to that culture, to that set of values, to the purpose, to the goals. So we see that in bigger companies because it tends to increasingly be a strategic initiative. They go to research for firms and consulting firms like yourselves and hear the same answer that the biggest impact that they could get in terms of ROI and everything is through engagement. And they
Okay.
want something that is not more of the same, that is transformational, that is not slightly better, that is changing the paradigm. So they want to be involved in it. And then on the other end, we see it in very small micro companies where they're just not very big, and then the CEO would be involved. In the middle, it's where in a lot of cases it'll be led by a chief, and the CEO would not always be involved.
Okay. So the importance of engagement from the top down as well as from the bottom up, I would imagine. And speaking to that, you mentioned frontline workers. So is that one of Workvivo's sweet spot? Do you also bring, I imagine you also bring knowledge workers into the engagement environment as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would love to say that this is how we plan the company, but that would be untrue. So it's easier to plan a thing like a social intranet or an engagement and communication tool to knowledge workers, people working in an office,
Right.
and then hybrid remote comes in, and obviously that's a huge driver in order to figure out the whole digital employee experience communication piece, right? But what we saw increasingly is that our sweet spot is companies that want to have a single solution for both, that have people in an office
Okay.
or increasingly working at home or in between, and people that work in the front line that have traditionally been excluded from all of that. But a lot changed since COVID. A lot changed not only with people that used to work in an office, that's obvious, but with how people treat work in a way. How people don't want to just sell their time anymore, but are looking for deeper purpose or at least more appreciation. It keeps coming first in every research of why people are leaving or staying. And Then you look at the map, and the vast majority of these never had a solution. We're talking about 70% of the employees that don't have an email and don't have a desk, and
Right.
their
Right.
interaction is limited to FaceTime or WhatsApp or whatever happens in the store. And suddenly we started to have to sign really big companies, Fortune 500 retail companies, manufacturing and automotive, and you name it, that are looking for that. We didn't coin that term. One of our customers did. They call us their digital heart. That one place
Oh,
digitally where
okay.
things happen. Think about it as like this pond in the savannah where all the animals come out to have a drink. And once that happens and you actually have adoption, a lot of other stuff and functionality like core HR, seeing your pay stub, all that could be integrated into that. So we started to develop more and more intranet functionality and stuff that people were pushing us, company customers. We want to do more with Workvivo. Why? Because that's what they're using. People in the front line, in the
Okay.
office, at home, and that started to become very powerful. And we keep pitching it, and we believe in it. That more important than any line in your endless RFP of 500 features are people actually using it, and people are using it. So it became that
Okay.
center.
Now you mentioned a couple of times sort of intranet, traditional intranet. People don't like to use the word intranet anymore. Maybe it seems a little bit too dated. I've seen a lot of people talking about the modern intranet as a way, I think, around that. But tell us, tell us very precisely what's the difference between that traditional intranet and what you guys offer?
So it's a really good question that I think a lot of the listeners and viewers would connect to. Most of the companies would have an intranet.
Hmm.
These tools are usually built as portals, more static, built around access to resources, usually managed and bought by IT, and therefore designed for IT buyers and admins. As a result, usage is very low. A lot of research that I've been reading estimates the true adoption rates of intranets to be anywhere between 10 and 30%, meaning people don't really, 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 really use it. Now, if the sort of pyramid of communications starts at like transactional stuff, like how do I reach the company policy for travel or stuff like that. And then at the end of the
Hmm.
pyramid, you have the purpose-driven stuff, our goals, our values, our purpose. Then we sort of flipped the pyramid on its head. Workvivo is built as
Okay.
a community. It's built as a community. It has social media-like design, and it invites people to not only be communicated to, but to actually get a voice. Freedom within boundaries. The admin could decide, how far you want to take it, and you could have more control or less, but it's designed in order for people to communicate in a two-stream communication kind of way. Based on that, it means that we're using, the same platform, like in social media, in order to do company announcements, but also to generate peer-to-peer content or feedback. And then we build the intranet, traditional intranet functionality into that. So you have document management, and you have like pages, and you have an app or a tool launcher, and a lot of stuff that you want to have in your central communication hub or tool. But the heart of the heart is that feed where stuff happen, where our number one feature is recognition. It's a simple, it's a feature in Workvivo. It's not
Ah,
something you can do with it. It's kudos, Beth. I just wrote something nice about you, and I chose that to be a shout out. And everybody gets it. And then for a whole day, you enjoy people chiming in and appreciating you. And it's something that happens in a physical environment, human environment. And suddenly we're digitizing that. And that becomes a huge driver for actual engagement between people, between managers and their teams, between the CEO and their company, right? So that's a big difference, I think, where it starts and how it's architected, like this, flat, or like that, uh,
okay.
two-way, one-way, pyramidal, democratized.
That's great. That's a great explanation. Thank you so much for that. So now I want to move away from technology so much and talk a little bit more about the business. Yeah, as I mentioned in the intro, the big news is Workvivo's acquisition by Zoom, and that was announced in April. I think expected to close the this current quarter. So has that closed yet, or is it still pending?
No, it closed.
It
Now you
closed.
can
Okay, great.
congratulate me.
Okay, congratulations. All right. Now, Zoom CEO Eric Yuan, one of the Workvivo's first investors, an early advisor. So he's clearly been interested in Workvivo, all along. What made this the right time for the acquisition? And what can Zoom do for Workvivo that Workvivo couldn't do on its own?
So many things. I mean, we were really pumped about we were really pumped about this acquisition as we weren't looking to get acquired. We're doing really, really well. We're growing over 100% year on year. In the last 12 or 18 months, we started to sign all these huge enterprise deals and win a lot. So the momentum was on our side. And then if it was anyone, we wanted it to be Zoom because uh, Zoom is a company that really managed to change the world. In terms of what they do, it's like a cousin, of what we are trying to do. The other side of communication,
Mm-hmm.
collaboration, more productivity driven, helping people get their work done in ways that weren't possible before. And if they were possible technologically, they didn't work. Zoom made it work. We all felt it, in businesses and our consumer lives. So that gives very valuable experience and it's a big advantage to be associated with that. We add to Zoom, and I think as a visionary company that's been so disruptive, Eric saw it from early and they saw it from early on. We add another dimension to what they do. You could think about the
Mm-hmm.
whole world, whole portfolio of product that Zoom has that is amazing and second to none about collaboration, letting people do their work better remotely. And Zoom expanded their portfolio amazingly over the past like year and a half or so, with a lot of products that help with employee collaboration and also customer-facing collaboration, like webinars and
Mm-hmm.
virtual events and call centers, right? And then we come in, and it's less about productivity directly, and it's more about the employee experience and all the stuff that we talked about before, the culture, the emotional connection, the employee engagement, and the personas are different. The HR, the communications, the C-suite. And
Mm-hmm.
these two together, there is a potential to bring a well-integrated, unified platform that doesn't exist in the world today. There's Microsoft, but for a lot of reasons, they won't be the transformator. In a lot of cases, it's what people are trying to transform actually. And they do a lot of things from tablets to this, right? And suddenly you have these two together and you cover all sides of communication, synchronous and asynchronous, productivity driven and emotion and employee experience driven.
Mm-hmm.
And the power of having that seamlessly work together with features that you could imagine of using the power of Zoom video inside a Workvivo activity feed. We could reinvent stuff like a town hall meeting digitally, AI that we still haven't really got to, but obviously it's a huge ask. And Zoom are very strong in AI, an amazing AI team, so much innovation going on there. So what do we get? We get an amazing reach in order to really accelerate our go-to-market globally, much faster than we anticipated before. And the product itself, it's a it's an amazing opportunity to really enhance these areas in the product that would have taken us so much longer with some of the best teams in the world. So in this sense, it's like it's such a perfect fit, and also culturally, it's hard to explain how natural it has felt since we joined. And I think that also has to do with the fact that Zoom is still a very hungry company, going up in the world, obsessed with growth and with providing great experience to new customer with disrupting. So it's not the kind of acquisition that would slow us down, but the type of acquisition that helps us move so much faster.
So your sort of the grand vision that you have for Workvivo and Zoom, it's Zoom within Workvivo, Workvivo within Zoom. How do you see that playing out for the enterprise?
So first of all, when we'll have something official to show, then we'll share it. But it's very, very new, and we're still exploring a lot of options. What we know for sure is that there will be a unified solution, and there will be standalone solutions as well for companies that
Okay.
start the discussion from the HR or com side and maybe use other tools. They use Slack or they use Microsoft, but they still want an employee experience best of breed. And of course, from the the unified collaboration like standpoint, they want to get that, but they're not interested in that. So standalone, best of breed, plus a unified one that is much, 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 much better together, that helps both sides of the business and future sides of the business, as Zoom has been very ambitious and is continuing to expand and make acquisitions and launch new products and all that. But this is the way we see it.
Okay. I wanted to just circle back to a point you made about Zoom extending into the call center, the contact center. So that also gives you the ability to then include those contact center agents in the Workvivo experience. Would that be fair to say? When you think
And
about frontline, are you thinking about contact center agents too? So, frontline, because they're customer facing, they have desktops, of course, so they're a little bit different than deskless frontline workers. But has that been sort of the Workvivo story at all?
it's not, it hasn't been the story, but it's something that it won't surprise me if like if it comes up because in a lot of ways it makes sense. But there are like more immediate like opportunities when you look at it. For example, from a Zoom perspective, having a very appealing offering for companies that are heavier on the frontline side. In
Okay.
any industry, healthcare providers, you know that healthcare companies have 105% attrition every 5 years.
I,
It's unbelievable. And every research shows that stuff that we talked about in this podcast are the main reasons before anything else. So taking a purpose-driven industry like healthcare, so heavy on the front line, and bringing that purpose out there, that appreciation that is lacking out there, huge opportunity, which opens the door for a lot of other stuff that Zoom has amazing, top shelf solutions to. And the same goes for other verticals as well. So there's some immediate like opportunities that are out there, and the sales teams are very excited to already create that joint story in order to start and explore these like joint opportunities. We're already working on a lot of them.
okay. I just have a couple of last questions for you. And the first is around the convergence. Do you see more convergence between enterprise communications, collaboration providers, and then employee experience companies, as we've seen with Zoom and Workvivo? And you mentioned Microsoft, they spun up their own employee experience platform versus a convergence, but they are trying to converge that with Microsoft Teams and et cetera.
I can tell you like I can tell you what I think
Right.
and what I believe. So I believe that the first level of convergence that we talked about in employee experience between engagement, measurement or employee listening, communication, intranet, and knowledge management, that is already happening.
Hmm.
It's already happening, which makes life very hard for point solutions that just do recognition, for example, and a growing expectation from enterprise companies to get something that would be more of a platform play that is extendable and integrated to other stuff, but a clear center of gravity. And that is already happening. So we're not doing this alone. Microsoft are using the same terminology and it's going there. So there'll be
Sure.
more consolidation there as different tools become platforms. Then what I see the collaboration market, the unified communications market is more, collaboration market is more advanced. And you see that there as well because companies want to have less tools, less noise, less distraction, not more tools, easier oversight and governance. And I see the emergence of a bigger market, a market of markets, as you will, that is a digital workplace platform. A digital workplace
Mm,
platform
okay.
where you basically have a center of gravity for everything. It doesn't necessarily, I don't know how the architecture would work. It doesn't necessarily have to be one platform. It might be two that are very, or three that are very well integrated, but one environment where communication of all sorts is being managed, and an increasing integration between the functionalities and the synchronous and asynchronous sides of communication in order to streamline the experience more, like the video example from before, or the engagement example in a town hall meeting. I think that will become the case, and I think that in a few years, it won't be about if you have a digital workplace platform, it will be about which one you have, and there won't be more than two or maybe three that are splitting the vast majority of the enterprise market. The entry barrier would be too high for a startup to come and say that they just want to do all that.
That's interesting. Digital workplace platform, we'll watch out for it. Now, last question, that's sort of a future. What do you see for the rest of 2023? What trends do you see in employee experience for the rest of the year?
So I think that the main trend is it becoming a thing. More traditional companies suddenly defining digital employee experience as a CEO level, as a board level initiative, strategic initiative for the year, and not a nice to have, not a cute thing. It's not a cute thing anymore. I think that the trend of understanding the financial connection, the ROI between these engagement measurements and what your employees are telling you, and between attrition, absenteeism, referrals, stuff like that, it's going to become like a no-brainer for very traditional companies. I'm not talking tech companies, I'm talking mining, everyone. That's going to be the main trend, it becoming a thing, it becoming an industry. And within that, I think we're going to increasingly see the trend that is putting engagement first, giving people a voice, and measuring the success of that program, but how much people not only like consume the information, but actually participate in a moderated way. And there'll be more and more demand for platforms that allow and encourage people to do that and sort of activate them digitally, like you would do with customers in the consumer world. And that convergence between employee experience and customer and user experience is going to continue to converge and become one thing, which brings you to the last one, which is enterprise consumerization. The understanding that the only way to get engagement is to create tools that are consumer inspired, that people actually want to use. Nobody uses tools because they tell them anymore. They need to want to. These three things are, I think, going to take us by a storm.
That's great. That's great insight. I really appreciate you sharing that and sharing everything during this conversation. I enjoyed talking with you, learning more about Workvivo and your vision. So let's leave our listeners there. Thank you again for sharing with us, and thanks listeners for joining us. Till next time, take care, everybody.
Thank you, Beth. It was great.